How many of you recognize today's gospel, the Beatitudes? The Beatitudes according to Matthew. How many of you hold the Beatitudes dear? You see, I find I struggle with them. I confess. I know many of my colleagues are absolutely delighted when it's their turn to preach and the Beatitudes come up. It may be I'm the youngest in a large family, so maybe I object just because I can. But there's something about them, as if there's some easy, feeling good thing about them. Like we feel good about ourselves. We just have to be those things and then we get to win God, right? It's like they're a guide for how to do that. And it always makes me feel anxious. Ways to get the reward, all you have to decide is which reward you want, and then you do that behaviour. You mourn or you're meek, Shades of a capitalist approach to gospel living, expected rewards for a certain type of work. I know, a little bit cynical. I just had to go there this week. I'm not suggesting that such intent resides within the text. I think my concern is more how the text may have become tamed so that we become comfortable. And it just so happened that I read a poem this week by Matt Moberg, who is a pastor in Minneapolis. Just a few lines from his poem that seemed to speak a little bit of what my thinking was. He writes this: "Stop using scripture like chloroform. Stop pretending Jesus was crucified because he preached good vibes and personal growth. You don't get to quote scripture like a lullaby while injustice stays wide awake. You don't get to ask God to heal the land if you won't even look at the wound. The scriptures you love weren't written to keep things calm. They were written to set things right." So given we have the Beatitudes this week, maybe rather than intended for comfort and surety, they are there to challenge us. Challenge us to live according to the heart of the law, not just its letter. For the gospel words to move from our heads, from being an idea to being the way we live. But for that to happen, something has to give, or we have to give something up. But how on earth are we going to do that? How are we going to move from the safe ideological idea to an embedded, indwelt way of being? What do I mean? Let me ask you, when you are in reasonable health, a reasonable state of being, when your world is pretty much on keel, these words are grand. They're inspirational and they're aspirational. But say you find yourself unexpectedly, suddenly injured or disabled in some way that requires intervention. Or something happens and your world is turned on its head through a sudden death, the ending of a relationship, through the actions of a corrupt government, loss of livelihood or house through the destruction of your environment. How do these words ring then? When the structure and the surety of your world that provides you with standing, self-understanding, purpose, direction and meaning is seriously compromised, if not critically injured, how do these words ring? I would suggest their meaning and inspiration and aspiration, if not disappeared, can be like a faded wash in the background, a memory of the way things used to be. Somehow they just don't touch you. They don't touch the reality of your now lived existence. They don't reach in and meet you. It's as if they were pleasurable and pleasant words of privilege, distant from you. They're not words that speak to the gnarly guts of what your life is now. And I wonder if it's like this because those words are in our head and not in our heart. For them to get anywhere near our heart, maybe we have to let them go. Let go of them trying to mean or to be something we think they should be or that is important. Let go of what we think they mean. Let them speak to us when we are mourning, when things are hard. They reveal to us the truth that they speak, because they speak of the way things are for us, not a future, not somewhere else, but right now we're in the midst of those places. They are present with us. And come to recognize them not because we think of it, but because it is indeed our experience. Ironically, even if we know it's desirable and a gospel-recommended prerogative to live differently, to take into our hearts those beatitude things, I'm not sure it's something we can just decide to do off our own bat. In his book, Insurrection, Peter Rollins quotes an anecdote from philosopher Slavoj Žižek. It goes like this. There was a young man who met with a psychotherapist once a week. He did it for years because he was convinced he was a seed. Eventually, after many years, he became convinced that he really was a human being. Thanking the therapist, he returned home happy. However, 2 weeks later, the therapist hears a loud banging on his door. When he opens it, he sees the man back again, sweating and breathing heavily. "You have to help me," says the man. "My next door neighbours recently bought chickens, and I am terrified they are going to eat me." "But surely you know now that you are a human being and not a seed," replies the therapist. "I know that," he says, "but do the chickens know?" Rollins comments, "This bizarre and irrational story contains a profound insight into the nature of belief. It helps expose the logic that enables us to continue to act in a way that we consciously do not see. So although we might believe that having more possessions, a car, a house, and so on, although we believe that will not ultimately make us happier, and we uphold the idea that pursuing such things should not take priority over relationships and quality of life, we then act oppositely. We act as if they do make us happier and pursue them at the cost of relationships and our own quality of life. We do this because we have been formed at a deep unconscious level by the world around us. All the affirmations and messages are the means by which we know ourselves and our identity. We can espouse a belief in what the gospel says today, yet our learning from young is not to live the way the Beatitudes proposes, not to live with a poverty of spirit, in mourning, with meekness, hungering and thirsting for righteousness that will bring persecution. We're not taught to be merciful and pure in heart, to be peacemakers, to be reviled and falsely accused. Oh no, rather we're taught to prove our worth, to assert ourselves, to make our mark on the world. To be grown up means that we have taken responsibility for ourselves, for our part in the world, and we have found and made our own way. Overdependence is a sign of weakness. Of course, unless illness or mental or physical impairment accounts for our need of others. Success is measured by how well we accumulate these things that allow us to be protected and buffered from experiencing our vulnerability, our frailty, and heaven forbid, the reality that we are helpless before our mortality. These shape, in fact, dictate how we operate. We end up acting out what we actually believe, even if we say differently. So what is there for us to do? If we can't do such gospel imperative and change by our own will, and discover we act quite oppositely to our espoused beliefs, what is left for us? In the story of Pooh Bear, he is first introduced this way. Coming downstairs now, bump, 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 on the back of his head. It is, as far as he knows, the only way of coming downstairs. But sometimes he feels that there really is another way, if only he could stop bumping for a moment and think of it. Transformation of the heart may not be something in our power to effect, but that does not mean that we can't be changed. And it may begin by being willing to accept that there is a disjunction between what we say we believe and what we do, and paying attention. If Pooh Bear stopped long enough, he may have discovered another way to come down the stairs. Scary as it may seem, maybe we need to stop trying so hard to live up to God, to find and please God, to make God as we need God to be. But if we pause long enough, we may discover the God who is with us, that every day we miss, that we already live with, that already knows us in our deepest being.